Hey guys, it's Tyler from the Line Change coming at you with another game recap video. Apologies for the lateness on this. I was having some technical difficulties in my studio. I use, clarification, I use Riverside, and for some reason it wouldn't let me enter my studio. I kept on getting like an error message, so I rebooted my computer and, did all this hoopla to try and get in, and then it finally worked. So here we are. So that's why this video is a little late. At the time of recording this, it's a little after midnight. I was hoping to try and get the video up by 11:30. Obviously, that didn't happen. Enough about that. So apologies for the lateness on this, but let's dive right into this game recap. What an exciting game. I missed the majority of it as I was at my other job, but I did manage to catch, the last 10 minutes of the third period and then the overtime. So I was able to catch that, but I did make notes while I was at my other job. So let's dive right in. So the first period, the Canucks managed to actually score in the first period, which is something we have not been able to say for quite some time now. The Canucks haven't been a first period scoring team as of late. So it's great to see the Canucks actually put one on the board in the first period. And actually from some of the highlights that I saw of the first period, the Canucks looked really good in the first period. They actually outshot the Kings 6-4 in Nils Höglander scores at 9:56 of the period, assisted by Derek Forbort. This was Höglander's fifth goal of the season. So it's nice to see Höglander get on the score sheet after he's had a lackluster season compared to his season a year ago. So not much happened in the first period other than, the Canucks actually scoring in the first period. I did want to make a note that Quinn Hughes only played 6 minutes in the first period. Now, he was originally a game time decision, and then it was said that he wouldn't play, and then it was said that he was going to play. So a little bit of confusion there just prior to puck drop. I believe it was Thomas Drance even said of The Athletic that Quinn's not playing. And then he had to recant that and be like, wait a minute, Quinn is playing. So the Canucks ended up dressing 7 defensemen and 11 forwards, and they made it known that Hughes was going to have limited minutes in this game as they just wanted, to see how he fared. So as I said, Hughes only played 6 minutes in the first period, which is pretty low for him. So moving on to the second period, Connor Garland scores on the power play, assisted by Hedel and Joshua, Garland's 15th of the season. So in the second period, the Canucks have a 2-0 lead, which is not something, again, we're used to hearing these days. The Kings ended up getting 7 shots in the period. Canucks was 6, so the Kings ended up out-shooting the Canucks in the second period. Seemed like, the Kings kind of bounced back a little bit after a bit of a lackluster first. Lankinen really kept them in the game in the second period. He really stood on his head once again. There were 2 penalties each in the period. I didn't write down what the exact penalties were, but I just made note that there were 2 penalties for each team in the period. So yeah, at the end of the second period, it was still 2-0 Vancouver. Going into the third, after 2 periods, shots were 13-12 in favor of LA. So in this third period, LA really ramped it up. Like the Canucks, it seemed like they kind of, laid back and tried to protect that 2-0 lead, something they've done in the past and something that's really burned them, especially, in games like this. It had happened in that game against Seattle where they were up 3-0, and Seattle ended up coming back and winning the game. So there was that. I did notice a little bit of that. I also noticed the Canucks icing the puck multiple times in the third period. Like the broadcasters even mentioned, it was like 2 or 3 times in a row where they iced the puck. And again, I've mentioned in a previous video, that just can't happen. And then Adrian Kempe scores his 26th of the season at 9:16, assisted by Gavrikov and Byfield. That put LA on the board. I also want to make note that the Canucks were playing great defensively in this third period. There was a lot of great defensive plays. one by Joshua in particular. And then I did notice the Kings started to pressure the Canucks later on in the game. They were spending a lot of time in the Canucks zone, moving the puck around. And at that point, I kind of had a feeling that they were going to score, LA that is, just based off the pressure that they were putting on the Canucks. The Canucks looked, scrambly. So there was that. And then obviously in this third period, the Canucks were really, really getting outshot by LA. And then Foegele scores his 16th of the season, assisted by Spence and Mouvrer. The goal was reviewed due to goalie interference. The Canucks ended up losing the challenge, so they therefore got a penalty. I do feel as though that was a questionable call on Rick Tocchet's part, reviewing that due to goalie interference. Yes, there was a little bit, he had, I guess, a bit of a case. It looked like there was a little bit of contact between Foegele and Lankinen, but it wasn't, concrete. And yeah, it wasn't there. You couldn't really tell exactly. So I thought it was a bad call on Tocchet's part to challenge that. I don't know why he challenged it. There was also talk about, there being like a high stick, and maybe that was why they reviewed it for goalie interference, so the referees could take a look at the high stick, but it didn't seem to matter in the end. The Canucks end up losing the challenge, something they don't do often because they don't challenge a hole often. So the Kings ended up scoring 2 goals in a span of 3 minutes. So they tied the game. I mentioned case of the Canucks sitting back with the lead again. I already mentioned that. I also, when I was watching, at least when I started watching the third period, I wasn't noticing Quinn Hughes on the ice. Obviously, we mentioned at the start of this video that, he was playing limited minutes. And yeah, I didn't really see him a whole lot in the third period, at least until the very end, was when I started seeing him. So obviously they were monitoring his minutes. And then the Canucks had a very late push at the end of the game, at the end of the third period, trying to get the win in regulation. Third period ends and we're going to overtime. So at least the Canucks got a single point going into overtime. Obviously, this ended up 2 points as they won in overtime, but they got that single point prior to winning in overtime. So that was a big one for the Canucks. Overtime. So there was that penalty in overtime by Drew O'Connor, who it looked LA was on a somewhat of a clean breakaway, up ice, and I thought O'Connor made a brilliant defensive play to get back. And yes, it looked like he kind of tripped up the LA player, but I also thought it was clean at the same time. And it's not often that the referee will blow the whistle for a penalty in 3-on-3 overtime. I thought he could have just let it go, like honestly, and that's just my personal opinion. But, ended up being a penalty in overtime. So it's 4-on-3. And then during that ensuing power play, Tyler Myers got hit in the neck by blocking a shot. So that was very scary to see. He ended up leaving the game. Post-game, it says that he's okay. He's got a massive welt on his neck, and that apparently it struck a nerve. So he was very dizzy after it happened. Rick Tocchet said post-game that, he's doing okay. There's a chance he could play tomorrow against Anaheim. So that is a really, really big positive. And the Canucks definitely dodged a bullet there, as that looked scary. And it actually made me cringe when I saw it, especially on the replay. So the Canucks ended up killing off that penalty. The Kings went 0 for 4 on the power play. So the Canucks penalty kill, back to the way it was. I know they allowed a power play goal against Utah, but prior to that goal, the Canucks had killed off 14 straight penalties. Now they're back up to having killed 4 straight penalties. So the penalty kill is like the one positive that the Canucks have been doing during this stretch of not being able to get any offense or struggling to get offense. It's been the standout positive for the Canucks, which is always great to see. And of course, Garland scores his 16th of the season at 4:26, assisted by Quinn Hughes and Philip Hedl. So Quinn Hughes gets on the score sheet in his return to the lineup, which is great to see, considering, he missed 6 games. And even though it's only 6 games, he essentially missed almost a month of action, because of the Four Nations break. So that's the game. The Canucks win it in overtime. They snap their 2-game losing streak. They get those 2 points that they dropped against, Vegas and Utah. They didn't drop another 2 points. Those 2 points are very important. They are now above the playoff bar. I haven't looked at the standings as of this recording yet, but I do know they were below Calgary, and I haven't also paid attention to see if Calgary won. Let me actually quickly look, just because that's important to know. So, why is it not showing? Technically, the Flames actually play today, as in Wednesday. So, but either way, the Canucks are... Actually, let me quickly look at the standings. Apologies for this. So as of this recording, the Canucks are at 65 points. The Flames are at 64. So the Canucks managed to leapfrog the Flames, and they are now in that second wildcard spot. The Kings gained a point, so they are now at 70. So yeah, there's that. Couple post-game notes. Lapidol, 2-point night, which is huge for him. He had 2 assists, so it's really great to see Heedle, continue to, show, what he's capable of, and, to produce on this new team. This was, of course, the first game that he had played with Quinn Hughes, as, he was acquired on January 31st, which was essentially the last time that Quinn actually played. Speaking of Hughes, he keeps his point streak alive. His point streak, dating back to when he was playing, is now at 9 games. So despite missing 6 games, he still has a 9-game point streak, and he was able to keep that going with that assist on Garland's overtime winner. Connor Garland, 2-point night, 2 goals plus the game winner. Garland had a huge night tonight, especially considering he had gone a little quiet since Christmas. He had been struggling to score, so that's a great confidence boost for him, getting 2 goals here tonight, especially the winner. And then Quinn Hughes ended up playing 21 in his return to the lineup. As we mentioned, he had limited minutes here tonight. So normally you'll see Quinn play 29, 28 minutes a game. So this was obviously drastically down by almost 10 minutes. But he did end up playing over 20 minutes in his return. On the first game, first half of a back-to-back. Obviously, we're going to be curious to see what his ice time is going to be tomorrow. I would have to assume he's going to play tomorrow, but he might also, much like tonight, have limited minutes, as they want to rest him, and they don't want him to have another injury, or they don't want to push him. He's just coming back from a oblique injury, and they need him for the rest of the season. Like you saw in those 2 games without him, they just looked lost, and has a lot of impact on this team's offense. So you need Quinn Hughes in your lineup if you want to have offense. So yeah, that's going to do it for this recap video. Again, apologies for the lateness on this. And yeah, if you like this video, leave a like. You really help out the channel. Same thing if you subscribe. So do me a favor and smash that subscribe button. Once again, you really help out the channel. Share if you're watching and listening to this on Spotify. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys thought of the game. And then also leave a comment on the YouTube channel as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video.